Playing slide guitar can be frustrating because at first you don't know where to put your slide to get a good note. And that's especially true if you're new to open tunings. But here's the thing, you don't really need to know every note in every position to create bluesy sounds. I'm going to show you a simple system that uses familiar landmarks on the neck to help you create bluesy slide licks. And without these landmarks, you might end up spending months or even years feeling lost on the fretboard like I did. And we don't want that. So let's get started by taking a look at what we can do between two important hotspots. If you're a premium member, you can learn more about hotspots in open tunings on the Slide Guitar Roadmap, but we'll quickly catch you up on that here. Hotspots are really just a few key frets to focus on when you're playing slide in open tunings. They're used so much in the blues, and they cover the chords that are in a typical blues progression, but as we're going to see in this lesson, we can go beyond the chords. We can actually use them as that landmark for creating our own blues licks. We're going to focus on the 3rd fret hotspot first. Let's get started. A lot of open G blues is in the key of G. So let's start with our 3rd string, which open is a G note. We can come up to the 3rd fret and we have the minor 3rd. And we don't have to get too technical or into music theory just to recognize that that's a very bluesy note. The root, the minor 3rd, and back to the root is a really good move. And we can articulate that note a few different ways. We can slide into that note. We can slide out of that note. We can also work above the fret a little bit. We can get to that 3rd fret and then push above it, right? That to me feels a lot like bending that note, a real bluesy thing to do. And of course we could slide down into it. You can see we've got a lot of ways to articulate that note, and it's a good one to play with because it is that minor 3rd. All right. Now, if we shift our focus to the 4th string, we can do all of those moves between the open 4th string and the 3rd fret. In the key of G, the open string is going to be the 5th, which means that the 3rd fret is the flat 7, another very bluesy note to keep your eye on. And if you need a little help in recognizing that that's the flat 7, this string hasn't changed from standard tuning, so that means our G note is here on the 5th fret. 2 frets down, that's the flat 7. 2 frets down from the root, from the octave, is the flat 7. So we've got some notes here to work with. And we can come up with some really bluesy licks just right here. We're not going to get too heavy into theory here, but I do want you to know that the minor 3rd and the flat 7th, they're both included in the minor pentatonic scale, which is used heavily throughout the blues. But we don't have to think about scales just to use these notes. That's what I like about the hotspots. Use that open and 3rd fret hotspot, and you got some licks about to happen. Speaking of which, let's take a look at an example that we can put together using that hotspot. And that's the cool thing about focusing on this hotspot. We can use these notes in our licks and not much else, and we still sound like the blues. It's a perfect way to get started improvising in open G without feeling like you're lost on the neck. But here's what's really cool. We get to take this idea and apply it to another hotspot whenever the chord changes. All right, keeping what we know about the open and the 3rd fret hotspot, let's bring that along for a chord change. In the key of G, the next chord we're going to encounter is a C chord, and we're going to find that at our 5th fret hotspot. But here's the really cool part. The same relationship between the notes exists here too. We just start from a different hotspot. In the key of G, the next chord that will come up in the 12-bar blues is C. That's the 4 chord, and we can find that at the 5th fret. Our root, C, is here at the 3rd string. And what's cool about this way of thinking is that we can find that bluesy minor 3rd, but this time of C, up 3 frets, just like before. So now we've got some room to move up the neck and use that minor 3rd the same way we did with our open strings and the 3rd fret. We can bend it, slide into it, out of it, in either direction. A lot of different choices here. But the cool thing is we can do the same thing with the 4th string. So we can come up from the 5th fret, in this case, to the 8th fret. And what we're going to get is that flat 7 up here at the 8th fret. What's really neat about coming up the neck and then shifting our focus here to the 5th fret is that not only can we move up the neck with our slide, but now we can move down and play some notes. And guess where some really cool notes are going to come from? The 3rd fret. If we take this flat 7 note that we played up here on the 4th string at the 8th fret, we can also find it along the 3rd string. We know that because this is a C, and our flat 7 is always a full step or 2 frets below that. So it's the same note, but now we have some choices. And we can also drop down and play the 3rd fret on the 4th string. So we can get a lot of really cool movement happening here around the 5th fret. This is where I used to get lost, moving up the neck and connecting such a big part of the fretboard while trying to stay connected to the music. It's hard to do, and it can feel really scary to step out and start moving and covering that distance, but that's exactly what we need to be doing when we're playing slide. Moving. That's what gets this thing to sound like it's supposed to sound. And that really is where the hotspots come in handy. Think of them as landmarks that we can come back to if we get lost. But let me give you a lick that we can take a look at that will help you start moving around, and you'll see how we can come right back to that landmark. To me, the real win with these hotspots happens when we're able to connect different chords through the changes. And I'm going to show you a simple way to build up these connections using a part of the 12-bar blues progression where there's a lot of chord changes. Later in a 12-bar blues progression, we're going to hit the D chord and then drop down to C on our way back to G. So we've got a lot of chord changes there, and yeah, we can take our hotspots and play with them through these changes. Let's take a look at how that might work. We start here, the 7th fret for our D chord, come up 3 frets, just like we've done before, and even drop down. But we've got all these options from D with our focus on this hotspot, and now the notes that we can access out of the hotspot. We can slip into the next chord's notes. So for here, I might go up just 1 fret to the 8th fret as we change from D to C. Listen to this. And then down into G. It's a really cool way to connect through the chord changes smoothly. See how focusing on just these 2 strings lets us concentrate on making these smooth movements? That's what we need in the beginning. We need those connections, and there's so many options on the fretboard that this cuts them down to a manageable handful that always works in the blues. And of course, we can take this through an entire blues progression and bring in a few other strings. But here's something that I came up with as an example of where you might take this next. this isn't about copying my licks exactly. Sure, you can learn them to add to your vocabulary, but this is about building your own phrases. Start with these few notes and center them around some hot spots, and then work your way through the chord changes. And remember earlier when I mentioned how these hot spots give you those reliable places to create these bluesy licks? Well, it turns out even if you know where to play these bluesy notes, you still have to get them clean and in tune. So click right here to watch this video next, and I'll show you 3 simple fixes that will help your slide playing sound more musical right away. I'll see you there. Until then, practice smart and play on.